You're here because you want to know if the money that you hold in the banks is safe. And my goal is to show you the underlying data so that you can decide for yourself. I'm Lynette Zang, Chief Market Analyst here at ITM Trading, a full-service physical precious metals brokerage house specializing in gold and silver, but really specializing in developing strategies for clients that will go through the trend cycle with. Because there is no doubt but that our money system, our financial system, must reset. So today we are going to take a look at bank insurance. And they actually call it a scheme. The central bankers themselves, the government themselves, refer to it as deposit insurance schemes. So in this country, it's the FDIC. Now, back in April, the FDIC published a remark on some proposed changes to the leverage ratio in the bank. What that basically means, all that gobbledygook, is that they're going to allow them to borrow even more, on the equity, including your deposits that they already have in the system. Now, while the FDIC, they're saying that it would require 121 billion less in reserves if they lower that leverage requirement. So that gives the banks even more money to gamble with through derivatives and other things. And we're going to be coming to that. Okay, and the question is, what are you willing to risk? Okay, now there's 12.2 trillion in deposits at all commercial banks. Out of that, you've got 7.3 trillion that would fall under deposit insurance. That means that you've got 4.87 trillion in uninsured deposits. Should those deposits be inside of a failing institution, those deposits would immediately be bailed in. In other words, the bank could use them in their quest for solvency. But what about the deposits that are actually insured? Well, according to the most current DIF report, there's only a little bit more than 1% available to insure all of these deposits. So that means just a little bit more than 1 penny to insure each dollar. Now, as long as there's just one bank here or one bank there that goes out, then it won't become visible. But if there is a collapse of the system, absolutely, it will be bam, pretty quickly visible, and then you won't have access to any of your funds. Now, what's the likelihood of that happening? Well, I think we need to look at the OCC's report on derivatives in the banking system, particularly trading derivatives. So I want you to take a look at this because, look, proprietary trading was a big issue in the demise of what happened in 2008 to the whole system. So, supposedly the Volcker rule inside of the Dodd-Frank Act was supposed to take care of that, though they really never got around to implementing it. And you can see that in this most current figures from the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency. And we'll just use JP Morgan as an example, where they've got over 55, these are hundreds, billions, 55 trillion or hundreds, thousands, millions, 55 billion in derivative contracts and notional, which means we don't really know how much is at risk, against the assets that they hold, which include your deposits. That's just about 2.2 billion. So over 55 billion to 2 billion. If these things go south, but a full 99.5% of them are for trading. Now, in 2008, the problem was proprietary trading by the banks, which when the credit dried up, the whole system imploded, as you probably do remember. So even though they put the Volcker rule in, which was supposed to halt proprietary trading, it never really got implemented, and we can see that right here. So the banks, and the top four, you've got Chase, Citi, Goldman, and Bank of America are the top four trading desks. You can see their assets to the derivatives, and my gosh, almost 100% of them, not quite, but close, let's see, 98.6 top four commercial banks. I'm sorry, 99.4% of them are trading. That's proprietary trading. They use your deposits to borrow and then trade with. It's right there in black and white. And what's the reward? Well, aside from maybe some trading revenues and bonuses and all of this, you can see right here of the banks, this is the CEO's pay to the average worker's pay. At Chase, $364 to every $1 worth of workers' pay. $365. That means that the average worker at Chase has to work an entire year, every single day, for an entire year to generate 1 day's worth of wage for Jamie Dimon. And in the meantime, during the bailout, Chase got $25 billion. So you can see the same kind of pattern. I did the top five. The only one that's not in there as far as trading goes is Wells Fargo. Isn't it interesting that the top four trading banks are in the top five banks for pay discrepancy? Well, not discrepancies, but for CEO to worker pay. They're at the highest levels. And all doing it on your deposits, which they get to trade. But we think that the deposit insurance is going to protect us. Well, there's not enough in there during a major crisis. There's not enough in there. And at the ECB level, it's basically, what do they need deposit insurance for? They're going to bail in the whole system during the next crisis anyway. Any wealth that you hold in the system, frankly, is most likely to be indeed bailed in. In Europe, they're looking at 9.3 trillion euros worth of deposits that can be bailed in. And they don't care if it's covered or under insurance or not. That's not, frankly, really relevant, because the new laws that they're putting in place, they can bail in the whole lot. All deposit accounts can be frozen, with or without insurance. Gee, isn't that like the outline that the Bank for International Settlements gave us after they tested this in Cyprus back in 2013? The answer is yes. They set out a blueprint on how they would do an over the weekend bail in your funds in a failing institution with or without deposit insurance. So you really have to decide for yourself whether or not you feel that they're safe. Because I'm telling you, everything is globally coordinated. So they're globally testing a whole bunch of different things to see how far they can push people or how they can promote it and get the least level of resistance. But frankly, as we've seen in Cyprus, in Portugal, in Ireland, in Italy, in Greece, in Poland, in Russia, I mean, the list goes on and on and on. When there is a bank holiday and they say, boom, you have no access to your accounts, or you have limited access to your accounts, either way, there is not one thing that you can do. And you know what I kind of glossed over? Let me go back to this a little bit more, because part of what they're talking about, the moratorium that they're proposing is controversial, but I want you to see that it's because derivatives are used, well, they're saying as hedging garbage to gamble with. Just showed you that in the OCC, and a suspension would risk pitching a counterparty into default, which is fine, because according to the FDIC, then they can just They can just liquidate assets because remember, in 2005, this is 2005, they adjusted the rules because when they changed the bankruptcy laws, they put the derivatives at the head of the line, ahead of even any legitimate creditor. So the FDIC has already adjusted their rules. It will be the banks that can determine who's going to be bailed in. And it will be most likely your savings that does it. So you basically have a choice. You can have your contract that says, okay, you have this much on deposit, even though it's swept into sub-accounts and the banks can use it and you're probably not going to get it back because it's just digital anyway, where you can have physical metal in your possession that is outside of the system and actually is real money and is real safe. Because you got to keep in mind, shields are made of metal, not paper, and not digits. So if you like this, give us a thumbs up. I would say this is a very important one to share, share, share. Next week, we're going to be talking about income inequality, and we're also going to be talking about leverage. We need to understand the leverage because that's really what the risk is. Leverage and debt. That's what the problem is, unpayable debt. So please be safe out there. Until the next time, I'll see you then. Bye-bye.